The Lucasfilm emergency meetings have come to pass. We told you first here on the WDW Pro channel by way of some excellent sources who are willing to stick out their necks to let you and us all know. Now we're finding out information allegedly from what has happened in those meetings. We're ready to divulge what we have. Folks, as we get into this one, it's heavy on rumor and speculation. A dosage of salt is needed. Check the track record if you are unsure. That's all we can say before we dive in right now. All right, folks, welcome back to another video of excellence here on the WDW Pro channel. What a joy it is to spend our time with you. We are so pleased that you choose to do that with us. Joining me to talk about the latest information that we have, although we cannot independently verify it, straight out of Lucasfilm and Burbank at Disney, we have Mexican Iron Man, and we have Lauren Connor of thatparkplace.com. Gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Folks, as we get ready to go into this, if you like content like it, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and when you click it, you stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. As we are beginning to discuss these meetings, I also want to let people know we are going to try to do so as truthfully as we possibly can. None of us were in those meetings. We are basing this off of trusted sources. Some of these sources are so cautious with what they're telling us that we can't even tell you how we acquired the information. Other sources are more straightforward, but we look forward to a robust discussion. The situation we find Indiana Jones, the Dial of Destiny in, and thus Lucasfilm, and thus Kathleen Kennedy, is that unbelievably, Indy is now going to perform, if we look at the latest projections for the box office, in its second weekend, somewhere along the same lines as Elemental, a Pixar film which was absolutely an utter embarrassment, a catastrophe for that studio. Most probably never saw that it was possible for Harrison Ford's swan song. Frankly, it pains me, and I mean that. I take no joy in this. Yes, Lucasfilm has made many mistakes. They have treated their fans unkindly. They have decimated the heroes that people loved. At the same time, there are no second chances on this. This is the final Indy. Harrison Ford will likely never lead another action film. John Williams will likely never compose another full score for a film. This sucks. It sucks what Lucasfilm has been doing. We'll report on it as honestly as we can. We'll do that right now, the ramifications of what they have done. Let's get started. Mike, I turn to you first. You have some information, allegedly, straight out of these Burbank meetings. Share with us what you can, and folks at home, please know that we can't reveal everything that we know, nor can we reveal how we're getting them for obvious reasons. Mike?
Well, I have a friend that works in Burbank for Disney, and I've noticed.
All right, what's his name, Mike? Go ahead and divulge all the details, please.
Well, I can't do that. I think he wants to keep his job. But I have told you off camera what he does, where the department where he works. But this is what he said: that meetings did happen. That they were incredibly heated. There is a lot of heat in general in Burbank related to a Lucasfilm. Related to the financial results. The way he described it to me was that all of this started with the layoffs, and this isn't helping anybody's morale or anybody's sense of safety related to their jobs, just in general. He told me specifically that from what he heard come out of this meeting, and he's close enough to know that no major decisions are going to be done for 2 weeks and from the release. And to which I asked him, I said, well, wait, this movie came out Wednesday. Is it 2 weeks from today, or 2 weeks from last Wednesday, or 2 weeks from, when is the 2 weeks? When does the clock start? And he said, no, they actually think they're going to wait 2 weeks from the weekend. So they're going to like 2 full weekends, or 2 full weeks, including the weekends, before any major announcements might happen about who might be held responsible for this. And I asked him if I could find out exactly who was in the meeting. He either couldn't or wouldn't tell me, but he just told me that he didn't expect there to be any major announcements related to this. He did add something I found profoundly interesting before we hung up, which was that there are proponents for Lucasfilm related to Indy they're under the impression that they think that their argument, I guess things got, the way I understand from what he told me is that things are heated. No major decision was made per se. The proponents for Lucasfilm actually think that this movie has some legs, and that the fact that it came out on the 4th of July isn't really, it's kind of a fluke because 4th of July fell on a Tuesday. And I'm just repeating what he told me, that they're saying that had it fallen on, say, Friday, Saturday, then more people would have gone. And so we need 2 weeks, or they need 2 weeks to see what are the real legs of this. And for whatever reason, there are people that within the indie Lucasfilm camp, or the proponents, whether they work inside Lucasfilm or they're in Disney and they're supporting sort of the Kathleen Kennedy Lucasfilm agenda, their feeling is that they think that this movie has some legs and that it's actually a fair assessment to wait 2 weeks. So they're going to wait. There's going to be some wait. Now, I don't know if that makes sense or not. I think this thing's probably already shot. But that's what I know. Do you want to ask me any other questions? The call was only about less than 10 minutes.
Let me add a little extra flavor to this based on what I've gotten on my end. We'll start with something that Jonas deciphered earlier today.
Okay.
Again, folks, we're not in that meeting, so just understand that this is some extra work that's went into this.
Okay.
But Jonas has come to the conclusion that based on the positions that we believe were involved in these meetings, that this was at least executive director level, probably low-level VPs involved in this. The other thing that I am hearing, and again, can't tell you how I'm hearing this, but nobody really believes that Lucasfilm is going to get this thing turned around. Disney has the same visibility in terms of the pre-sale tickets for this weekend that the trades do. The trades are seeing a 60% drop for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. That's horrendous when you have low numbers already, because you really don't have the numbers to drop 60%. And now the film is aiming for elemental territory. Now, why then is Disney giving Lucasfilm this 2 to 3 week cover? Well, what I'm hearing is that they're trying to protect Harrison Ford, and not for altruistic reasons, but because he's involved in another major movie they have coming out next year, and they need that movie to succeed. And they are trying to protect the press surrounding that. Because what happens if Disney comes out and says, well, it's hard to get an action film to take off with someone of this age. Nobody's ever tried it before, yada, yada, right? That's an easy excuse to come up with. But it would also throw under the bus your big star who's supposed to be playing a major character in Captain America 4. The other issue here, this is a bit of conjecture, but the thought has occurred now that Harrison Ford may even be released from having to do press tours, going around with the media when it comes to the release of Captain America 4, to protect him from the fallout of this film and people asking him, how does it feel for Indy to fail in such a way? But this is unprecedented. I mean, I've looked, and Mike, I'll get your take on this, but I've went back and looked at some of the most horrific flops in cinematic history. There's not another film that features a franchise this big that falls this hard. And I'm here to tell you, I don't think this all falls on the feet of Indy. James Mangold did not do a good job. Phoebe Waller-Bridge, horrible casting. But I think this is a Kathleen Kennedy situation where audiences were soured on the idea of ever returning to something she's made after Star Wars. I think that this is absolutely retribution from society at large. Mike, as we are joined now by Jonas J. Campbell, Mike, go ahead and give me your thoughts on that.
Well, I had a quick question and then a comment. My quick question is, but before the conjecture point, are you telling me that you got a data point from someone else that's not me about this 2 to 3 week delay?
Well, how about this? Jonas doesn't know anything about what we've been talking about. He's coming in cold. Jonas is the one who discovered that 2 of our sources were corroborating that amount of time. Jonas, tell us how that story played out when you were informing me.
So I mentioned it.
Oh, and welcome to the show there, Jonas.
Yeah, good to be here. Sorry to be running late. It's been an unusual day. So I don't know how much of each side we've gotten into at this point, but basically that 2 week grace period that you and I discussed, Mike, also lines up with a total of 3 weeks or 3.5 weeks that Pro mentioned for a completely different set of circumstances. So this could be coincidental, that the timeline of you have 2 weeks for this box office situation to work out, or what they think is going to happen in the next 2 weeks, could be completely coincidental to this other 3.5 weeks. I don't know what's already been said, so I don't want to spoil it here. If Pro, you want to say what the reason for that?
Will. I think that's sufficient. Mike, was there another comment that you had to make, or
well, yeah, in this phone call, I basically understood that they sort of felt that they did 100. The argument being, hey, we did 150 to 160 million in whatever it is, 8-9 days, domestic, international. They seem to think that they were going to get to double that in the next 2-3 weeks. But if what you're telling me that it's got a 60% off drop off, and I haven't looked at the weekend box office projections at all. I've been so busy with work today. There's no way that's going to happen. I mean, there's just no mathematical way on planet Earth.
Let's put it this way. So I am just now pulling up the newest numbers that we have this out of Deadline. I'm not going to pull up the article at this time, but we'll put it in the description, folks, if you want to click on it and check out the link. Going into this weekend, it was going to be neck and neck. That was the latest I had heard. It's now worse. It now looks like the Patrick Wilson film, Insidious, The Red Door, which is, by the way, a film that was on none of our radars at all, period. Nada. It is now aiming for $24 to $26 million. Excuse me, 26. 26 is the range exactly they believe it's going to hit. Indy is now down at 24 to 26 million, which essentially means they believe, based on the ticket pre-sales, that Insidious will be the number one movie at the end of this weekend. That is unfathomable that Indy... Well, let me put it this way. I don't want to talk too much in this, but I have said for months that Indiana Jones had 2 weekends, and then Tom Cruise would come wipe that film off the face of the earth. It is collapsing.
I think
before
you're
it
even
ever
right.
happens.
I think you're right, Pro. Even more spectacular, as I mentioned on the Pro show. I think it was in the middle of your show, I got an email that I was supposed to see the movie, I think on Wednesday night, and I got an email that there's now a special event, and I got my tickets rolled back. I'm going to see it Monday, 7:00 in IMAX.
So cool.
Well,
so Pro, I mean, you're on point. This movie's doomed because starting Monday, Tom Cruise is going to start taking deposits.
I mean, we're not even Tom Cruise, and it's literally collapsed. Wow. I mean, this is so. Lauren, let me go to you on this one. You and I did a video maybe 3 weeks ago where we looked at these projections and we looked at how I thought they were high, and I did that using various data points around the marketplace that other outlets were not using. We made a prediction for where the film would be, and you said, well, that is just too low. I cannot imagine that. If that happens, Lucasfilm is done. And this is below what I even thought. If you had told me that this was the reality that Indy would face, I would have said, no, that's in the realm of fantasy land. We deal with reality here on the show. This is below where we said Lucasfilm is done if it does this. What has happened, Lauren? How did we hit elemental levels?
I think there's a couple of things at play here. The thing that I keep going back to is that they made a movie without an audience. The first thing you have to think about when it comes to Indiana Jones is that is solidly in my generation's wheelhouse. This is a movie that you want to have people that are 40 and over be heavily invested in and go see this movie. And if those people are going, they'll bring their kids, and maybe you have a chance to latch on to a younger audience. But in this case, they've alienated that audience. I think those are the people that are aware of what's happened with Star Wars. They may not know the name Kathleen Kennedy, but they do know that it's probably the same studio, and that I don't think that people really want to see an 80-year-old Indiana Jones in 1969. I think you're willing to go see Harrison Ford to see a good swan song for him. But when you start talking about Indiana Jones in 1969, what is this thing? It's not pulp adventure, 30s, 40s serial. You're not even in the 50s B-movie science fiction anymore. He doesn't belong in that era. And there's something about it, I think, that an audience can sense. It's like, this doesn't feel right. It's not going to be correct.
Right. And they had to shoehorn in Nazis in order to justify the existence of this film.
Right. Now, the other thing is that when you're talking about Insidious, again, this was not on our radar. I don't think any of us really knew it was coming out. But when you think about it, this is a movie that the younger crowd is going to want to go see. It's rated PG-13. For those in this 13 to 18 demographic, this is going to be your dating movie. I think this is the kind of thing that kids are going to want to go see. You take into account the success of Megan last year that got all kinds of attention. This is a demographic that the studios are shooting for, and so you can get these kind of sleeper hits. And I think those two things conspired against them. You're absolutely right. When Mission Impossible launches, there's not going to be anything left of this movie but a stain on the pavement.
And I'm here to tell people this tracking stuff they have for Mission Impossible, it is as wrong as everything else they've predicted this summer. So just get ready. Tom Cruise is going to come in and steal the show. It's what's going to happen. They're using the wrong measurement data, just like they've gotten it wrong on everything else so far. But the amazing thing to me here is that we're looking at Insidious. This is a franchise this is the 5th film as well. The last one, the predecessor to this film, scored $2.4 million in its opening. It is getting a 10-fold increase to beat Indy. That's why we didn't see this coming. Now, what I think is happening here is that people are desperate to see a movie. And so they'll go see anything, but they won't go see something by Kathleen Kennedy. Mike, one of the things that we've heard from the sources regarding what's going on, one thing that was concrete apparently that came out of these meetings is that Disney is prepared to pull the plug on all marketing that is not already contractually obligated.
Yeah, sorry,
So,
I mentioned that to Jonas earlier, and I forgot to mention that in my comments earlier. But yeah, that marketing dollars were being pulled back unless it was already committed and in motion. That there's
Mike, walk us through though. When a film studio does that, when a distributor does that, it's essentially lights out, right? That means that they have lost total confidence in the film.
Oh, without a doubt, because often what you might see happen, and we've seen this, we've seen this with other releases, where I mean, let's just go back to your Tom Cruise Maverick example. When that film was coming out, there were many naysayers. There were people say it was only going to do 50, 60 million, and we know what it did. Well, when a film has legs and starts to perform, what happens then is that there's a momentum there. And so, of course, you don't want to destroy the momentum. You want to support that momentum. And when that flicker of light of momentum is there, you'll start seeing, those ads that run still the #1 movie in America, or still rated the #1, you see these things pop up here and there because they want to keep that momentum going. And in the case of something like Indy 5, which already was expensive to start off with its published $300 million budget. We know from other data points that there were reshoots. We know that I'm sure the budget was in excess of that, whether it was 330 or 350 million. We know that the studio internationally, domestically, is only going to get back 40 to 60% of every box office dollar. It always humors me when I read the trades and they say, oh, well, it made this much. No, it didn't. The studio is getting at best 40 to 60% of that, depending on where it's distributed, which country, and what the deal was. But anyways, I digress. We know that it had a starting production budget of 100 million. And, there's this old saying in business, and even Hollywood at some point has to become susceptible to it, which is that at what point do you have to make that decision where you say, I'm not going to throw any more good money after bad?
Well, and the Walt Disney Company, as we all are aware, is really hard up for cash right now. So they cannot spend money just testing the waters right now. They have to go after sure things. If they're going to spend what are we at now? 6 figures, 9 figures on marketing a film. They need 9 figures right now. They need every penny they can get, and this movie's not making them any money.
Well, even worse is that this is money. This isn't like. This is money that's financed. This is money that they have to come back with and pay. There's lines of credit out there. There's, so, yeah, I find it fascinating that just a week and a half ago, I'm reading, was it last week that they canceled Crater, which was a $50 million production, to get a $50 million credit, Jonas?
Yes.
Well, they just took a Disney Plus show that was out for, what, 7 weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And,
great.
that's the one. Yeah.
Great.
Okay, yeah.
And so meanwhile here, it's got to be incredibly frustrating for the finance and accounting and tax planning folks, because here they are, as to use Jonas's language, looking for nickels and dimes in the sofa, which they are. I mean, if you're going to cancel a $50 million show, take it off so you can take the write down and get a $15 million tax break to free up $50 million in cash. And then you have something like this come along, Indiana Jones, which right now could lose between, my God, 300 to 400 million.
It's going to be one of the biggest losses in cinema in all of history.
This is
Now, as
the
a
thermal.
percentage, Pluto Nash is a bigger flop, but in terms of total dollars, Indy may be number one at the end of this run. We'll have to see what happens. But yeah, this is
In advance of Oppenheimer, this is the thermonuclear bomb that's exploding in Disney right now. I mean, there's just no
and
way
it's
around
killing
it.
the industry, Mike. This is what the industry has done, where they circled the wagons and they promoted a false narrative about Star Wars, Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, Disney, etc. for so long that turned this into a situation where the pressure had to be released somehow. And that's what we're watching right now. And it has detonated to such a degree that it is damaging the entire industry. These cinema owners, these movie theater owners, they didn't do anything wrong. It's not their fault that audiences are refusing to go watch one of their heroes desecrated again. The cinema owners didn't have anything to do with this. It's not the people who are behind the cameras. It's not the people who are just doing the staffing. This goes right to the top. These are the executives. These are the studio heads who have done this. And this is the access and mainstream media who have promoted these lies and given a false picture of the marketplace, of the economy even, so that it has misled these studios and led them to believe that they could produce content such as this and be successful. They clearly cannot.
Wow.
All right, well, everybody's in agreement on that one.
Absolutely. The thing that they need to be focusing on right now, and theater owners have been through the ringer over the last 3 years to a ridiculous extent. They were the first sacrificial lamb of the entertainment industry, and with what happened right now, Disney, if they're putting advertising dollars towards anything, it needs to be these 8 quote unquote classic films that they're going to be putting into theaters that cost them basically no money. And even if they're only making 25% at those, they have a higher chance of making money on those 8 re-releases than they do on most of their theatrical slate this year. That is a travesty.
There's an argument to be made that they should just re-release all of their classic movies for the next 18 to 24 months while these strikes either are in motion or about to be in motion. Just re-release everything and try to reinvigorate all the brands. I'd re-release the original trilogy of Star Wars. I'd re-release the original 3 of Indy Jones. I'd re-release everything. Snow White. I mean, I would go up and down the library and I would reinvigorate, remind people what they once loved most about all these films and all these film studios.
And then
now
on physical, and then
Mike,
put
you
it
might
on
even have
physical
Iger
media.
come out. You might have Iger come out and pull an Eisner. Remember how Eisner used to do with the Wonderful World of Disney?
Yes.
Iger comes out and says, promotes these items and talks about how magical Disney once was, and we're going back to that, folks. Something to that effect. Jonas, you make a great point about the physical media. Any thoughts further on that one before we head to the next?
Well, I will say that Little Mermaid is going to come out on physical media before it goes to Disney Plus. They are
That's one
actually
improvement.
making bolder moves to put things on physical media first, and they're saying, "Well, we'll announce Disney Plus later." So,
gentlemen, we need to go to this point of order because one other thing that we believe that Disney is considering at the highest levels is who is going to take the brunt, who is going to get the axe for this. Here's their problem. This is a really difficult knot to untie. Pixar is in just as bad a situation as Lucasfilm somehow. They have a string of losses. You have Elemental, which is essentially performing in the second weekend the same as Indy. Okay. That's really bad. Pete Docter's the head of that one. He probably needs to go. He has made comments that have even attacked fans and talked about training fans like Pavlov's dogs. Then you've got Kathleen Kennedy. She's at Lucasfilm. Here's the issue. We all know that probably both of those studio heads need to go. Perhaps they're lovely people behind the scenes. Perhaps they just wear Forces female shirts for fun. But whatever the case might be, if Disney starts firing everybody, that's going to spook the investors even more. Lauren, I want to go to you. If you're over there at Disney in a consultation situation, who are you telling them needs to go first? Do you give the axe to Kathleen Kennedy, or do you send out the door Pete Docter and explain why?
I think it would have to be Pete Docter, because I don't think there's any chance that Kathleen Kennedy is going at least until next year. She's under contract for next year, and it's only a year to wait out. They're not going to put anything out in that time, so they may as well just wait out the contract. Meanwhile, Pixar has been flailing for a long time. They need to consolidate those animation studios and or release staff that are redundant. It's something that I think at this point would be understandable and not spook the investors too much, because they're probably asking the same questions. Why do we have two animation studios? That being said, I do think that there do need to be some heads rolling at Lucasfilm as well. I don't think they're going to be high-level people, but there needs to be a symbolic gesture of some kind made so that when the quarterly earnings calls come up, they can quell some of the unrest that is likely going to be generated by that by saying, look, we understand there's a problem. We're taking some kind of action. They'll try and put a positive spin on it, but I don't think that they're going to do anything as drastic as getting rid of Kathleen Kennedy anytime soon.
My question to you there, and you're more familiar with Lucasfilm than I am, there's only one other person at Lucasfilm that I can think of that they could fire that would move the needle, and I don't think they're going to fire Dave Filoni. Is there anyone else at Lucasfilm right now that has high enough of a profile?
Can I just pause and say, though, that if they fired Filoni, the guy who had nothing to do with this at all, I would sit back and say, well, yeah, that sounds like Disney, all right.
Yeah.
When it comes to like publicly known personalities, there's not anybody coming to top of mind for me there, but that's why I'm saying the action would be symbolic. Whatever it is they do, it may not necessarily be a rolling of heads, although I expect some of that will have to happen.
Or do they cancel the James Mangold movie?
Oh,
is
yeah.
that what they could do?
Well,
publicly?
Yeah, I think you could, but I think honestly, the production slate that they've announced, all of that's in question. I don't think that anybody's really got any faith that any of the announced projects that they've got up are necessarily going to happen.
I think the indie numbers are so bad that you're right. The Indiana Jones numbers are below what I... Listen, I'm pessimistic about Disney right now, although I do love the history of Disney. I mean, I love this company and what it stood for.
Now,
this is worse than I could have ever foreseen.
I want to put some things in perspective here, because I think that we have a tendency to maybe make things larger in this commentary space, because let's be honest, we've got a horse in the fight. We don't really want Kathleen Kennedy to still be there. I want to emphasize that Disney itself is still going to be there no matter what. The parks and those divisions, they still make lots of money. Now, where they are in danger with the parks is that Universal is striking while the iron is hot. They've got hot properties right now, and they're looking to try and take the crown. So if they continue to slide in the parks division, there's going to be some real trouble in the future. But they've been financing these losses through the park revenue. They've thought that they could just absorb the hits for as long as they wanted. I don't think Kathleen is going anywhere until at least next year. I don't think that... I would be surprised if they were considering anything like axing Lucasfilm as a studio, but one of the questions I've been asking is, what do they bring to the table anymore? I think the only thing that they've got that's of value at this point is the IP from a licensing standpoint and ILM as a production house. As an idea studio, as producing their own properties, at this point, they've failed. They've ruined those IPs, and I don't think that they can be recovered. So I think Lucasfilm's in a real bad place, because this is what I think the meetings were about. It's that you have these people come in. They may not be the high-level executives, but you've at least got some vice presidents in there, and you're pointing your finger at them and saying, why are you employed right now? What are you bringing to the table? You're losing us all this money. Justify your existence.
Those are great points. I want to go to Mike. Mike, you're more familiar with the investor side of all of this. What does Disney need to do to, shall we say, fortify the beliefs, the confidence of the shareholders out there after this debacle? Valiant Renegade has been all over the media. with his story about $900 million in losses at the box office over the last year.
Right.
By the end of this year, that could be at 1.5 based on what we're looking at now. What do they do?
I'm hoping that he'll update his numbers before the next investor call, release another video, and then certainly after all of the rest of the release schedule comes up, that he does an in-year one in preparation for the first the last call of the fiscal year. Anyways, look, this company's 5-year low is $85, and if this thing's
Mike,
been
Mike, what brought them to that $85 5-year low?
Well, I'm just saying. If you look at the 5-year low at $85.
I'm with you, but for context for the audience, what caused that low? The pandemic crash.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, but
we're nearing that without a pandemic now.
But my point is that yeah, that's exactly where I was going. Is that it's been teetering at about 87, 88, 89, 90. When this thing drops, if this thing drops, I shouldn't say when, if this thing drops into the low to mid 80s, that is going to be a thermonuclear warhead. And I'll tell you what would really be helpful right now. What would be really helpful is if someone like Nelson Peltz happened to have Indiana Jones as a personal hero, and then he went and saw this movie. Because I'm quite sure a guy like that wouldn't be pleased with this. I mean, we're in conjecture land. I'm just talking, without any basis.
We're not giving financial advice to anyone else.
I'm not giving financial advice. I'm just speaking from my own inside, spirit heart here. But this company is teetering. Bob needs to be very, very careful. 2 or 3 more wrong moves, and if this thing goes south of $80 to $85 a share, it is like all hands on deck, because there is no excuse, and all the questions must be asked and answered. And I'll tell you this much: the other thing too, as Jonas keeps identifying things that are being cut and written down, there's a ticking time clock here. They cannot cut them. I really believe that this company has to refine its soul financially from the spirit of the company. That is where the fixes happens. They've got to go back and say, who are we as a company and what made us great? Being a family-oriented company and bringing that value back. Because in the modern era where we're at now with technology, news spreads like wildfire with people. And this brand has been destroyed. And I think a lot of what's happened in the movie theater with Indiana Jones has to do with the fact that people talk, and we talk quickly, and we're not just pushovers, and we're not just going to hand over our money. And if we continue to not hand over our money when Disney gives us things that we don't like, then the stock will continue to drop and fall. And then maybe we'll get a cleaning of the house, because what we really need to do is we need to affect who are the institutional investors and who's on the board of directors. Then and only then will we get real change everywhere, whether it's Lucasfilm or Disney corporate, Pixar, etc.
I'll add on the last time we had a big transition because of the board, that was when Roy Disney went after Michael Eisner. And we don't have any more Disneys on the board. And right now it seems like Abigail Disney is vaguely in support of Bob Iger, except that he makes too much money.
She's also vaguely unstable. That is my own position, folks, not a diagnosis, and no offense intended.
I'll second that opinion.
She has some positions that are abrasive, and that's what I mean by that.
Yep. Mike, I have 2 questions I want to ask you if I can.
Yeah.
I'm not an investor or know anything about Wall Street, but I do kind of track the share price just because to me it's interesting to follow and see when things get triggered. I think, like you said, $85 is probably psychologically significant, and that's when people start getting nervous. What is the next trigger? What is the next price? Is it $80? And if so, if you drop to that low, what happens then? What actions do investors start taking?
I mean, if this thing drops to $80 a share, I think there's going to be, and now it's we start cleaning house. If this thing gets, and that's across the board, and at that point, I don't think anyone's safe. Literally, no one is safe. The honeymoon is over for Iger. I mean, the other thing too is he's got a much shorter honeymoon this time around, as we've seen with the financial trades, because he's not someone that's coming in and he's going to, the whole idea is that Bob knows this company, has known this company, took this company to the highest stock heights. So everybody figured when he came back in November, It's not going to take Bob very long to figure this out. Well, Bob is not doing the things that he needs to do, and the stock's not going where it needs to do because he's being delusional. And it's like you said, Lauren. This thing, look, if this thing gets in the low 80s, something like that, then it's all hands on the chopping block, all hands on deck. I believe, because at that point in time, the writing is in, it's not just on the wall, it's in stone tablets that are unbreakable. It's just bad. Now I will say this is that the other thing, there is another ticking time clock besides Hulu, which is that it was reported that when a deal was worked out between the Peltz crowd and and Iger and his supporters, he did make the mistake, or the concession or negotiating point, whatever you want to call it, of saying that he was going to try to pay a dividend before the year is out. Now, the fiscal year's coming fast. That's September 30th. I don't think he'll make that. Now, he said before the year is over, and I think he said that very specifically and very politically. That gave him, in case he needed it, to December. If he ends the year with a bad stock price and without issuing that dividend that he suggested in their negotiations that he would, then I think the shareholder proxy fight is back on, and game on. Everybody's heads on the table, chopping block table.
What a fantastic point. What a fantastic point, Mike. Thank you, Lauren, for asking the question, because I had not thought about the dividend. Lauren, you have another?
Yeah, I have a second question, and this is, I guess, for everybody. We know they're going to be releasing these classic films coming up through the rest of the year. And one of them that we keep hearing about, that supposedly they've made overtures and they keep getting shot down, is Pirates of the Caribbean. What happens if they do a re-release of a bunch of these movies? Pirates is one of them. It's been perennially a favorite. It makes a lot of money. Let's say that it does better than the opening for Indy 5. At that point, do they make another overture to Johnny Depp and try and get him back into another Pirates movie?
By
Johnny
the way,
Depp, I don't believe will ever return.
People Magazine, he told them that he's lessened his language on it from not for a million alpacas to you never know if the script was right.
Also known as, if they offer me 40 mil, we'll talk.
I'm just trying to think of some way they could pivot,
Well, they're going to need something.
They're always testing the waters. That's why we have a Moana live action remake coming, because they are trying very hard to go back to the well here, because they don't have any new ideas. That's one thing we've definitely seen over the last 3 years.
Folks, as we prepare to wrap up this conversation, just understand that you may have heard over and over that Kathleen Kennedy is gone. You may have heard that Disney was going bankrupt and all kinds of stuff. The difference right now, and why you're hearing this for the first time on this channel, these sorts of conversations, is because of what Mike is describing. The 85 low came at a time when investors didn't know if Disney could open their parks again for 2 to 3 years. They didn't know if theaters would be open and when. There was uncertainty just like you could not believe. If we go below that now, when, cinemas are open and the parks will have their turnstiles moving, that's why it would be red alert, red alert, red alert. I also want to say to all the folks out there working for Disney who watch these videos, and we know you're out there, and you probably do a good job. The fact that you are watching these videos indicates that you've got at least some good judgment. But we want to say that when it comes to pushing agendas that have failed at Disney, I would just ask, which is more ethical? Is it more ethical to push this sort of backdoor propaganda into children's content, or is it more ethical to make a profit so that the people at the company can continue to have a job, they can continue to support their families? Is it more ethical that people would love to go and see your movies and your films, and that they would take on voluntary transactions with you because they believe in what you stand for and what you do? I would submit to you that that is the more ethical proposition. And I would submit to you that that is the position which Disney should hold. It is ethical to do well financially, so long as you're not ripping off your customers or lying to them. How about we try that again? All right, let's go around and find out where we can find you on this great big beautiful web, starting off with Mike, Mexican Iron Man.
Midnight Sage After Dark, and on Sundays with Valiant Renegade.
And Lauren, where can we find you?
Also on Sundays at Valiant Renegade in the chat. You'll find me at that Park Place writing articles from time to time. I'm at Lauren Connor 9030 on YouTube and at Lauren Connor on Twitter.
And Jonas, other than above the ceiling tiles in Burbank, where can we find you?
Well, it's getting a little creaky and a little warm up here, so I might be falling through soon, and that'll be quite the image. I'm on the Pro Show Thursdays 5 to 7. I'm also an investigative reporter for That Park Place. I've got a YouTube channel under my name where I go through everything woke in children's content, especially Disney. And I'm on Twitter at Jonas J. Campbell, and I would love to talk to anyone who would love to talk to me on Twitter.
And Jonas, if you do happen to fall through the ventilation system, I only ask that you try to be above the sound department when that happens. It would make it all the more humorous. All right, folks, the conversation here has come to a conclusion, but the commentary begins now. Drop a comment down below. We cover your comments. We care about what you think. We truly and really mean that. An attitude of gratitude for each and every one of you who has stuck through and listened to this. We are endeavoring to provide you with quality content and telling you the truth as best we can. If you like that, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and when you click it, you stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. Please go find all of these expert panelists that I have. I consider them friends. I consider them to be some of the best individuals out there for you to follow and listen to. And wherever you are, whatever you're doing, please keep learning, keep growing, and no matter what, keep having fun.